Welcome to episode 52 this week. I have been on a roll with the weekly episodes. I hope you are enjoying them. I really am getting back into the flow after taking some time off, obviously there last month. But I have been receiving so many messages and really feedback and thoughts on the last few episodes and having guests on and just having that mix of solo episodes and guests. And I think that it's been incredible to hear your feedback, all positive, which is amazing. And also I think this week it's just myself, so just my presence, a solo episode. And because the big day is fast approaching next week, I think that it's going to be really difficult for a lot of you listening, of course, especially if you have lost your pet quite recently in the run up to Christmas, or are anticipating the death of your pet. And I just want you to know that I hope this episode can be super supportive and helpful during this time of year, which is so heartbreaking and so painful for so many people who are navigating it without their pets, or navigating it with a very elderly or a pet that has a terminal diagnosis. It's going to be really, really difficult because there's that caretaking role during such a busy holiday season as well. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. But I would love to focus on a main topic that I've touched on before in an episode, probably last Christmas maybe, but I really feel like delving into it a bit more is going to be helpful. And I also have a surprise that I will share with you mid-episode. But what this episode is going to be about is all about setting boundaries during pet loss, like during the Christmas season. And boundaries are something that I'm passionate about, that I have worked hard on only in the last 5 or so years of my life. I didn't have great boundaries up, before then, and I don't know if any of you listening may have been in the same boat. Maybe you have wonderful boundaries, but specifically boundaries around your pet loss experience, your grief that you're feeling. This is what we'll be diving into on this episode, and there are a few topics that I want to kind of touch on, but really first what I want to really describe is what is a boundary. And it might be a silly question, but how I actually learned what a boundary was, which is, I definitely have shared this with Patreon members, but how I actually learned in depth about what a boundary is, how to set one, what happens if somebody breaks your boundary and so on, is through the book The Joy of Being Selfish by Michelle Elman, this wonderful UK author. I don't know if any of you are following her on Instagram. She's a breath of fresh air, Michelle Elman. And the book The Joy of Being Selfish is all about boundaries. And it was just the most wonderful book that I found, and I was like, I need this book. And I've always kind of held on to it and referred back to it when I need some kind of grounding in some boundaries that I've set in different areas of my life. So I'm going to read a little bit from her book, just like a little section about what actually is a boundary, because she describes it way better than I can. So I'm just going to read from her book. So what is a boundary? At their very core, boundaries are the way we teach others to treat us. They are how we communicate what is acceptable and what is not. They define where you end and another person begins. We need boundaries in order to protect ourselves from manipulation, gaslighting, disrespect, and abuse. Boundaries between you and others are like a house. Inside the house is your life. and the four walls that create the house are your protection from the outside world. You aren't completely closed off because you can open the door to let people in. But only you open that door when it is your choice. If someone were to kick the door down, that would feel like a violation. You wouldn't then tell them, oh well, since you're here now, make yourself at home. That's the same as someone violating your boundary and you saying, well, since you're going to do what you want anyway, who am I to say anything about it? If someone climbed through your window, you wouldn't let them in because that window was closed for a reason. If I didn't want to do something, my friends knew that if they pestered the old me long enough, I would give in. That's the same as someone knocking on the door all day and then eventually letting them in simply so they stop annoying you. You would never do that. So your home, like your life, is your space. You get to decide who comes in and who has to leave at any moment. If someone walked into your house and took a delicate vase and threw it on the ground, you would kick them out. Now imagine that vase is a private, vulnerable piece of information. How many times have you shared something confidential and it wasn't treated with the care it should have been? It is your house and you get to decide what behaviour you tolerate inside it. Some people would allow others to wear shoes inside the house, while others don't like it. There are no right or wrong rules, but which are your rules? It's your house. They are your boundaries and you decide. I thought it was lovely to share that with all of you from Michelle Elman's book, The Joy of Being Selfish. And I think she puts it so beautifully, really, and just in such easy language to understand. It makes sense. It made sense in my brain, and it really helped to understand what a boundary is. And you decide what those boundaries are. You decide in what element, in what part of your life that, that they're attached to. So I hope that kind of creates a vision in your mind of what boundaries you could set around your pet loss experience, around Christmas. So in particular, navigating this holiday season, like navigating the holiday expectations while you're grieving, is something that is really imperative, really. So how to manage the pressure of the holiday traditions, the social gatherings, the family visits, all of the things that are expected of you. Really, there's so many expectations, and especially when we're out of our rhythm, we're not in our normal work schedules. So really, our pattern of behaviour is changed. Although we're happy we have a break from work, if that's something that is in your life at the minute, that you get a break from work over Christmas, and maybe not, but we're already up in a heap because our schedules have changed, and then let alone there's all of these traditions that we have to feel like we have to, go through and progress throughout the days in the Christmas holiday. So there's definitely those, and I think communicating your needs with your family and friends as best as you possibly can is something that's going to be so important during that time. And although some of those people may not understand, maybe just communicating a portion of that and not into huge detail, because the more we share with somebody who we feel doesn't quite get it or doesn't quite understand, the more we delve into that, the more we share, the more vulnerable we become, and then the more susceptible to criticism, laughter in our face, judgment that we get towards. So setting those boundaries in quite a way where we're very clear, and like, it's not to be harsh, but it's to be very clear, open and honest in as short amount of detail as possible, if that makes sense. That has helped for me anyway. I mean, for example, like opting out of certain activities, or, you know, opting out of maybe new traditions that your family wants to do that you find overwhelming. So managing the pressure of those social gatherings, of those visits, is something that's really, really important. And there are ways, if you feel comfortable enough to honour your pet's memory, if your pet has died, to honour your pet's memory during this festive season, because you'll have some time off work, hopefully. You can explore some ways to incorporate your pet's memory into that holiday season, into some of the traditions, if you feel comfortable enough to do that. There is no right or wrong way to do this. It could be just as simple as a gesture, like creating like a memorial ornament, or lighting a candle, or, I don't know, donating to a specific like pet related charity or organisation that you kind of feel close to. It could be maybe creating or ordering like a Christmas tree ornament of your pet to pop on the Christmas tree. So there has to be a good balance of being able to celebrate and being able to mourn and being able to grieve. So having the balance is really, really important, because a lot of people that I've spoken to are kind of looking forward to the distraction to take their mind off the pain. And with everything that's going on with family and visits and traditions and Christmas Day walks and all kinds of things that happen, that can be a distraction. The keeping busy, like I've mentioned on so many episodes, the keeping busy. So in not giving your brain time to process, to grieve, to mourn, if it's been very recently, to mourn the death of your pet. So trying to have an awareness of having that balance and taking breaks in the day, going into the bathroom, to even just to wash your hands, to have some alone time with yourself, to think about your pet, even for 5 minutes in the bathroom, just to have a break from everything that's going on. And that can be a small break, but I mean this, it can lead to larger grief breaks. So a grief break is just going to go away for half an hour or an hour, or however long you need to connect in with your grief and give your grief some time during this holiday season. That's what's important. Another thing that's super important that I wanted to touch on is recognising and managing emotional triggers. Pet loss, grief triggers, and managing those and recognising those. So trying to identify for you what might be common holiday triggers for your pet loss. And this could be like anything ranging from certain Christmas songs to certain family traditions to certain like locations where you go during Christmas holidays, to even down to certain Christmas decorations. It could, or even down to certain Christmas food that your pet loved as well, something like that. So there are lots more that I would assume that would be emotional triggers for you, and reminders of your pet during Christmas. And how do you prepare for these kind of emotional triggers, these emotional challenges, is first of all is just to recognize them. And in your mind to say, why do I feel this in my body right now? Why do I feel like this is affecting me? Whether it's a family tradition that your pet always was included in. I'm just giving that as an example, and it's just to gently have that awareness. Do you feel a tightness in your chest? Do you feel a lump in your throat? Do you feel tears welling up? Do you feel like out of nowhere an utter sadness that you can't pinpoint? It's just to recognize, have that awareness, ask yourself that question: what's going on in this environment right now for my body to have this reaction? And what that is an emotional trigger to what's happening in your environment. Take some minutes away, alone for a minute, and just check in with yourself and ask yourself. And if it's the case of, my pet was always included when we did this, when we went on this family morning walk before the dinner, and that's why I feel this deepness, sadness, or this tightness in my chest, or this lump in my throat. And just to reassure yourself, okay, I understand why I'm feeling this way now. I've checked in with myself and I've asked myself, and it's just to have that self-compassion then to reassure yourself that it's okay to feel this way. And when you're ready to go back, and if you feel comfortable to do that family tradition without your pet, okay. And if you don't, that is totally okay too. It's okay to opt out, and it's okay to communicate that to your family and friends. You don't have to even give an explanation. I'm not going to come along this time. I'm going to stay here. Keep it short and sweet, So like those grief breaks to process emotional pain in small doses during the Christmas break is going to be super helpful for you. So it's not to flood yourself with all of this socializing and like high energy stuff, and it's really, really important to like implement those grief breaks for you, so that you give your grief, time. You give that space and time to your grief during that grief break in those smaller doses. You might need to do that maybe 2 to 3 times a day during the Christmas, or maybe just a longer time once a day. But that's going to be super, super helpful and important. Like, I often talk about your inner circle and a safe person. So creating like a support system during the holidays is what's going to be super important as well. And it doesn't matter how long ago your pet died. And even if it is, a year ago, 6, 7, 8 months ago that your pet died, and maybe your family and friends have like somehow automatically thought that, oh, she's okay now, it's been months, or he's okay now, he's had loads of time to so-called get over it, which I hate that saying. It's so unhelpful and horrible, but this is what other people are possibly feeling and thinking. So it's to create that support system during the holidays, and like even now a week before Christmas, to kind of talk to those people and talk about the importance of leaning on those people, if it's okay to communicate that to them, for them to listen and to understand that this Christmas is going to be really difficult for you because your pet isn't in your life anymore. And there might be some like ideas that you'd like to kind of honour your pet's memory, to incorporate with your friends and family, the people you feel safe with. If you've spoken to them about your feelings of overwhelm coming up to Christmas with the death of your pet, and suggest something to them, saying maybe we can create like something like a scrapbook of my pet together that, that will help me to feel connected to my pet over Christmas. Or maybe we can do this hike that we always did with my pet. Maybe would you like to come with me? It's just to have an idea, if you feel comfortable enough to do that with the safe people that you've wanted to share how you're feeling during the Christmas break. And it always comes down to practicing self-compassion and embracing all of the mixed emotions, the waves of grief during the holiday season. There will be joyful times and there will be grief-stricken times. There will be deep sadness and there will be laughter with your family and friends. There will be anxiety and panic and triggered feelings. And then there will be like feeling comfortable and safe and reconnecting with people you hadn't seen in a while. And there's these mixture of emotions, and those waves of grief will come up and hit you, and then they'll subside and they'll just come in and out, and they'll flow in and out during this holiday season. Giving yourself permission to set boundaries and prioritize your emotional well-being should be at the top of your list. And I'm giving you that advice because there's times that I didn't do that for so long myself. And once I started to, then things changed in my life and my mental health improved, my well-being improved, my emotional well-being did improve. And that's why it's so important. And your boundaries during Christmas can range from so many different things. It can range from advocating for yourself, standing up for yourself if you receive some snide comments, some hurtful comments from relatives, family, friends during Christmas about the death of your pet. And it's advocating for yourself and literally saying like, that was really hurtful, and please don't mention that again. Or that's a form of setting a boundary. You're advocating for yourself. So when a boundary is broken, then if that person then the following day, on, for example, says it on Christmas Day and on St. Stephen's Day, says something else to you about your pet and laughs and makes a joke about it. So how that works then is, deep inside you feel they've broken my boundary again. When I asked them yesterday that please don't, talk like that or mention that particular thing, that's hurtful to me. And if they go ahead and do it again, that's your boundary being broken. And then a consequence has to follow. And that's being, compassionate towards yourself. So it might look like on St. Stephen's Day, maybe that person says another hurtful thing towards your pet loss experience. And for you to highlight, I've mentioned this already, that by you saying that or you laughing about this is really, really hurtful to me. And I'm not going to discuss this with you any further. And you leave the conversation. You leave the room, That conversation ends because you ended the conversation. And each subsequent time that happens, if there's no reaction, but you're continuing to hold that boundary and you're continuing to advocate for yourself and being empowered enough to then set a consequence to that boundary being maybe broken continually. And it's just taking away communication and taking away your presence from that situation or conversation. In my opinion, and from the book as well, Michelle Elman's book, The Joy of Being Selfish, I believe is the ultimate way to implement a consequence for your boundaries being repeatedly broken. So if, for example, which I hope that this never happens, if a boundary is repeatedly broken by somebody that you love in your life, or And it's just continuing, and maybe they're breaking several boundaries. So this could be over a course, and this mightn't even have to do with pet loss. It might have to do with several different aspects of your life. What then it leads to is you really like sitting down with yourself and saying, the consequence isn't working here. They're continuing to break these certain boundaries. So then, unfortunately, and I'm completely speaking from personal experience, it leads to a boundary of no contact. And that's very, very difficult to get to. And it's a very, very difficult decision to make. But within that book, I have learned how to stand up for myself, advocate for myself in professional and personal, aspects of my life. And I really feel that it is very transferable for you listening if you are experiencing pet loss, because there are a lot of people out there who refuse to acknowledge it. Especially maybe relatives that you haven't seen in quite a long time and you see them once a year at Christmas. They may come out with anything. They may be liable to come out with anything. And having those boundaries in place is how you give yourself self-compassion and protect yourself and advocate for the memory and the relationship you shared with your pet, which is absolutely precious and unbelievably meaningful to you. And it's also a form of anyone that questions that or laughs at that or thinks that it's meaningless is like hurting a part of your soul. So boundaries are extremely important. And I definitely have blabbed on a little bit too long. I said I would share a surprise in the middle of the podcast, but of course I got distracted. So if you've gotten this far, for this particular podcast, I have designed something that is going to be super helpful, I hope, to you. And what it is it's a setting boundaries for pet loss during Christmas guide, a downloadable printable guide for you, specifically for this time of year. And there's lots in it. There are ways and tips for you to get through this season while experiencing pet loss. There are some very, very specific journal prompts for you to work on. There are some lovely affirmations, and there's just lovely tips and advice in this setting boundaries for pet loss during Christmas guide that I have made. The link for this guide is in the show notes. So scroll straight down once I finish blabbing to you and click that link to download your guide, and it's completely free. This guide is completely and utterly free because I wanted to make sure that I offered a really helpful resource to everybody during this Christmas season, because it's really, really difficult. I've been getting lots and lots of messages on Instagram of people struggling with the imminent pressure, stress of Christmas next week. So I hope that this guide is helpful for you, completely free. Download it in the show notes. That being said, I will be hopefully releasing an episode next week. It might be a short one, but I feel like it's important to keep these regular weekly episodes particularly during this time of year and thereafter. And I think it's been really, really wonderful to read your feedback about the guests that have been on recently, which are amazing. I have some amazing guests lined up in the new year, and I really feel that it will help support you during your grief journey. I just want to wish all of you a peaceful, boundaried Christmas. And I think that that's super important. I will leave a link for Michelle's book in the show notes also. So go easy on yourselves. Be gentle with yourselves. grab that free resource in the show notes. It'll really help you to set some boundaries around your pet loss experience over Christmas. And until next time, take care.